This year is unique. Chanukah, the festival of lights, coincides with New Year's, a season of renewal, reflection, and setting goals for the future. In Israel, 2024 has been a year like no other. A war fought on 7 fronts. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers have been battling tirelessly in Gaza, Lebanon, and beyond, defending us from Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other threats. But there has been another battle, a war of words on the media front and social networks. These platforms have amplified antisemitism and anti-Zionist lies, spreading fear at best and inciting violence at worst. Yet here we are. It's the 6th night of Hanukkah, a holiday that reminds us of the bravery of the Maccabees who fought to save Judaism against the Greeks and triumphed. It's a holiday of miracles, of light. A small pitcher of oil that should have burned for only 1 day lasted 8, illuminating the temple in Jerusalem. This year, ILTV and Ynet News proudly bring you Lights of Hope, a virtual end-of-year event celebrating the rare convergence of Chanukah and New Year's. Together, we will highlight 8 pillars of innovation, resilience, and renewal that promise to light the way for Israel and the Jewish world in the year ahead. I'm Ayan Hoffman, ILTV Executive Editor, and I am honored to be your host tonight. Join me as we journey from candle to candle, looking forward to the places where we hope and pray to see new light in the coming year. Let's begin with Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, sung by David Zaor from his studio in Tel Aviv.
בלבן פנימה נפש יהודי הומיה ולפת מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
And now it is my honor to welcome the President of the State of Israel, Isaac Herzog, to share a few words with us.
Shalom, dear friends, from the President's residence in Jerusalem. From so many different corners of the earth, our hearts connect around the world during these days of Chanukah to affirm what is most true. In these darkest moments of winter, in an hour of deep grief and longing for all of us, we recall that our light still shines. It is a light that takes so many forms, as this event tonight displays so beautifully. Lights of creativity, lights of connection, lights of progress, lights of peace. They all point to the same truth. Against the darkness and evil and the pain, there is so much light, so much beauty for us to acknowledge, to celebrate, and to cultivate. We have seen it in countless ways since October 7th, that infamous day. We have seen it in the remarkable courage of soldiers and civilians who came forward to defend, protect, and save their fellow citizens. We've seen it in the spirit of generosity, mutual responsibility, and connection that has carried us through from both within Israel, and we have seen it in beautiful acts of friendship and caring in communities around the world. These points of light do not, of course, take away our pain, our agony, or our responsibility. We cannot speak about darkness without thinking about our sisters and brothers still buried deep in the dungeons and tunnels of Gaza. They continue to cry out to us and remind us of our supreme duty to free them and let them go. In this season that takes us inwards, the entire world must project their voices outward and demand immediately, bring them home now. We cannot be whole without them. And of course, this is also a call for the leadership of Israel, the leadership of all the countries around us, and predominantly a call and demand to our enemies, Hamas. The presence of each of you here, my friends, now shows clearly the power of coming together in joint purpose is greater than any attempt to weaken us or divide us. We will stand together against hatred, bias, and anti-Semitism, and stand with our communities in Israel and throughout the world. The State of Israel, with our friends and allies around the world, will rebuild, and we will find a path to harnessing our inner light and spreading it to a kinder, softer world. Yes, we shall overcome. May we shine it together during these 8 days of Chanukah. And always, I thank ILTV, its editor-in-chief Maayan Hoffman, and Ynet News for creating this inspiring form of connection. And I thank all of you. Toda Rabah, dear friends, to all of you. Happy Chanukah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our first candle represents the light of security. On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a devastating attack on Israel. They infiltrated our borders, murdering 1,200 innocent people and kidnapping more than 250 others. Today, December 30th, 2024, the war continues, yet Israel has achieved significant victories, demonstrating resilience and strength. To explore the light of security, we are joined by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and CEO of Abitchonistim, also known as the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Joining him is Jonathan Conricus, former IDF spokesperson and a senior fellow specializing in the Middle East at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Let's hear their insights. Thank you so much for being here, Amir Avivi and Jonathan Conricus. So I want to jump right in and start with the North. With the, after the fall of Assad's regime, I'm wondering, what does this mean for the balance of power in the region, and how might it impact our security on the northern border going into 2025?
So we're witnessing historical changes, and it's very hard to predict exactly how it will evolve. It's just the beginning. We'll have to see how things evolve in Syria, and whether Syria stabilizes or destabilizes, and what will happen with Turkey, how proactive Turkey is going to be, and whether they have aspirations to move south, and this might challenge Israel, how stable the Kurds will be, and overall, looking at Trump's administration, what will be the U.S. policy, how much they can keep Turkey on leash, how supportful they will be to the Kurds. Israel, looking at the Druze community, definitely wants to secure them and intends to stay in the perimeter to defend the Golan Heights and the Hermon Mountain. And we'll have to see throughout the coming year how things evolve. It's difficult to predict, but one thing is sure, Iranian axis is falling. And now we need to push harder and finish the job. And I'm really hopeful, looking at the next administration, that finally we'll see the U.S. leading a coalition, joining the fight, and really, in a short period of time, bringing down the Shia axis.
Wow, which is an incredible vision. And when you think about it, we're actually one step toward that vision, given the fact that we were able to make some real damage to Hezbollah. And the ceasefire with Lebanon and Hezbollah at this stage is actually holding. Jonathan, do you believe that this is just going to be a temporary lull, or will we see a secure border with Lebanon moving forward into the next year? Will that enhance regional stability?
I think that we've enjoyed many tactical successes. The IDF and Mossad have delivered for the State of Israel against Hezbollah and against the Iranians. However, where I think that we're not quite there yet is the strategic perspective. When I look at the ceasefire deal that Israel agreed to, I think we sold ourselves short a bit because the military achievements were very significant against Hezbollah, but the diplomatic deal that was made doesn't really bring substantial change to Israel. And if this remains the situation, if this ceasefire, which is has a 60-day time reference, if it goes beyond that and becomes the new norm in northern Israel, in my mind, that isn't a good situation for Israel because it doesn't provide with real security assurances for people to go back to northern Israel and for there to be, a real security change. Hezbollah is still more or less intact, damaged but intact, still has weapons, still has personnel, still has funding. Yes, the events in Syria deeply affect Hezbollah's ability to resupply, but at the end of the day, as long as the Iranian regime exists, Hezbollah will exist. And while Israel did a lot of damage to Hezbollah, at the end of the day, they're still there, and they will for sure invest whatever resources they have and whatever the Iranians will make available in order to redevelop their capabilities. Their goal hasn't changed, and their strategy hasn't changed. And their strategy is to be part of an Iranian axis that eventually seeks the destruction of Israel. As such, the current situation is an interim one where I don't see a real strategic improvement for Israel along the northern border, and more needs to happen. One of two things: either a complete military destruction of Hezbollah, which is a very tall order, or a change of power in the Middle East where the Iranian regime is taken out of the equation. Either one of these two need to happen for there to be real security in northern Israel.
And the change of the Iranian regime is exactly, I think, what you were referring to in terms of President Donald Trump getting back into the White House on January 20th. Now, he has already indicated that there might be some potential strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities. How realistic do you think that operation is, at least in the near term? And what would be the benefits and the risks of taking some action directly against Iran at this time?
So I think it's important to understand that doing a decisive attack on the nuclear sites and other military capabilities, it's not the beginning of a war, it's an end to a war. And this is important because some people feel that the US attacking Iran is opening a war. No, it's closing a war. And therefore, it's crucial to see the US really leading an attack. And we're talking about an airstrike. We're not talking about boots on the ground. This is not about 20 years in Iraq or Afghanistan. And I know how the American people feel about the ongoing wars that they had, and not very successful ones, by the way, in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is not the case. This is about 1, 2, 3 days of massive air attack, and this will change completely the Middle East. And really changing the situation in Lebanon, in other places, is not just about hitting the head of the snake and bringing down the Shia axis. It's what will follow. And what will follow is peace agreements, is normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is not one more Abraham Accords country. This is the leader of the Sunni world, of the Muslim Sunni world. Normalizing relations with them will bring peace also with Indonesia, with Malaysia, possibly Pakistan, Oman. This is building a huge alliance, a Western Israeli Sunni alliance that will be a magnet to countries that have been on the Shia side, that might fall into radical Sunni side, to push them towards an alliance that is Western Israeli, moderate Sunni. And this will create an alliance that will also counter this Chinese, Russian, Iranian front that we have been dealing with in the last few years. It might deter also China in the Pacific. It might affect the actions of Russia in Europe. So it's a much bigger issue than just looking at the Middle East or specifically at Lebanon or Gaza.
So, Jonathan, let me turn back to you. And that's a pretty, scary vision, but sounds like one that has a solution. I do want to take us into Gaza for just a moment. Obviously, Hamas is a proxy of Iran, but the current situation in Gaza seems to be that we've dismantled around 80% of the military infrastructure. We're on the cusp of some kind of ceasefire that will, God willing, bring our hostages home. Do you believe that there's a possibility of new players actually emerging in Gaza and being able, maybe through some of these means that Amir is describing, to govern the Palestinian people and to create a new reality on our southern border?
So out of the fronts that we're addressing, we spoke about 7 active fronts, right? In addition to that, lawfare and international media, 2 virtual fronts, but very, very important, but then 7 physical fronts that Israel faces either Iranian proxies or Iran itself. Out of all those fronts, we've seen significant success in various of them. Iraq, the Iranian proxies have now decided to withhold their fire. We're still dealing with the Houthis, but we have dealt significant blows to Iranian proxies in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Gaza. There's still Judea and Samaria to deal with. Now, out of all of these areas, Gaza is the area where I am the least optimistic because of the complexity of the challenge, because of how poor, uneducated, extremist, and jihadi the population in Gaza was before the war, and how strong and so many years that Hamas had to brainwash Palestinians in Gaza and therefore create a very, very difficult environment for us to operate. And of course, UNRWA contributed in terms of jihadi glorification and antisemitism. So when I look at the different options, the ones that we would want, a coalition of Arab nations under American leadership and Israeli security control that would go in and do peace enforcement, we tried to bring that about, but it hasn't happened for various political and diplomatic reasons. We tried to have local leadership, clan leadership, in Arabic Hamula, which is the traditional structure of governance in Arab society. Before imperial days, when the British and French came, that is how Arabs governed their local and mostly national matters. That has been, I would say, decimated by Hamas. Maybe will be allowed to re-govern. And what I see in the coming years will be a reality where Israel will have to take security control over the Gaza Strip, control it, control the borders, have absolute freedom of operation, and most difficultly, actually administer the Gaza Strip and start distributing food and controlling it. Without that happening, and that's a task which is a very heavy lift for the security establishment, and a task that I believe that the security establishment doesn't really want to do. I don't see any way around it, because without doing that, that leaves Hamas in power, that leaves UNRWA intact, and that leaves the problem, the strategic issue, still intact. And I think that we're in for many years of instability in fighting in Gaza, where hopefully in 5-6 years, some alternate political structure will be built, which is local, Palestinian, that has security assurances from Israel, and does not have any room for any radical elements, not UNRWA, not Hamas, and no preaching for jihadism in the mosques.
So we are in a conference, though, that is called Lights of Hope, and the idea is to be able to think a little bit forward in some kind of light, some kind, take us out of the darkness of the last 15 months. And Amir, I'd like you to offer some final remarks, whether it's diplomatic, strategic, or military. Is there some hope for a stable Middle East, at least in the near future? Is this candle going to burn a little bit brighter this coming year than it did last year?
I think it's already burning brighter. I think that the last year changed the fate of Israel and the Jewish people. I mean, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, how are we going to deal with all this huge threat, with Iran, with Hezbollah, 150,000 rockets, Hamas, even for a determined and optimistic guy like me, it was very, very hard to see the past. How are we going to deal? And yes, we started with a terrible tragedy, terrible. 7th of October, it's a, I would say, historical, day that was devastating. But I think that from that moment onwards, we started building a new future for Israel. And I think that this coming year is going to be a very defining year, which we hopefully will see the Shia axis falling down. Who could have imagined that a year ago? We'll see peace agreements and huge economical prosperity that they will bring with them to Israel. Israel will become the Singapore of the world. All the world trade will go through Israel. And I think that we'll also see a path to sovereignty and really applying the Israeli law in critical areas in the Jordan Valley and Judea and Samaria, and pushing a solution that might be something along what Jonathan suggested here, maybe cantonization, clans, local leadership, maybe at the beginning in Gaza, might be also afterwards in Judea and Samaria. I think that there is definitely a path towards security, stability, and prosperity for Israel.
Wow, well, on that note, I want to thank you so much for being here, Amir Avivi and Jonathan Conricus. Our next candle represents the light of regional stability. Before October 7th, 2023, Israel and Saudi Arabia appeared to be on the verge of normalization. Just 2 weeks before the massacre, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United Nations General Assembly with a historic message. He said, "We are at the cusp of an even more dramatic breakthrough, a historic peace with Saudi Arabia. Such a peace will go a long way toward ending the Arab-Israeli conflict," he said. "It will encourage other Arab states to normalize relations with Israel. It will enhance the prospects of peace with the Palestinians. It will encourage a broader reconciliation between Judaism and Islam, between Jerusalem and Mecca, between the descendants of Isaac and the descendants of Ishmael." Little did he know what was about to unfold. 15 months later, the landscape has shifted dramatically. The region faces a new reality, but one that might once again bring us closer to that historic breakthrough. This time, Iran's influence is waning, and the fall of the Assad regime has shaken the region's balance. To discuss the future of regional stability, we are honored to welcome Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israel's Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation, Rowan Osman, a Syrian-born activist, and Asher Fredman, Director for Israel at the Abraham Accords Peace Institute. Let's hear their perspectives. Rowan, Asher, Fleur, thank you so much for being here today. Now, Rowan, I want to start with you. You went from being an anti-Semite to someone who actually defends the state of Israel and the Jewish people. This really is like a tremendous amount of change. And I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit about your personal journey and how it influences your perspective on what's happening today in Syria, the rebels, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, but also the chance then for a new future. How should people view the developments that are happening in Syria today?
Thank you for having me. First of all, it's no secret that we are brainwashed in the region. I grew up in Lebanon. I was a fan of Hezbollah. I grew up, like we recovered from teenage, and I realized that the Jews are not the enemy. Israel is definitely not the enemy. When people thank me and think I'm an extraordinary person, I always remind them I'm not special. I can afford speaking up, being vocal in my support for Israel, but many can't because they were terrified of al-Assad regime arresting their mother or torturing their brother. People are afraid if they have a granddad in Tehran. I am in this position, but believe me, many do think like I do. They realize that the axis of resistance, the axis of evil led by Iran, is the enemy of the people in the region. What's happening in Syria is promising. That is not to say I'm fond of Islamists, but the fall of Assad was very, very important. Since then, I'd like to share this with your viewers. I built a TikTok account where I post only in Arabic, wearing my Star of David, speaking about peace with Israel. And I can see in the video insights where people write to me. And they are mostly in Syria, in Lebanon, in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia. And they want peace with Israel. They want to get rid of the acts of resistance. They are even grateful for Israel, even if Israel did not initiate this change. Thanks to Israel, beaten Hezbollah up in Lebanon, the rebels could get rid of Assad. Give them a chance. It's a transitional period. The demilitarization of Syria, was very important. God knows who's trying to seize what. We have chemical weapons. Forget that. Syria has antiquities. There are criminals. Nobody's controlling the borders. It is important that it's demilitarized. Now it's time to build a state. If the jihadists surprise us, they can all be in the same place with their leader, al-Jolani. We can handle the situation if a military action is required. But so far, what's happening is very important, and more people will follow in my footsteps, and it is the beginning of a new Middle East.
Wow, and to think about a new Middle East, right before October 7th, we were really on the cusp, or at least we thought we were on the cusp of peace with Saudi Arabia. And then, of course, the October 7th massacre occurred. We are now 15 months after that massacre and about 16 months from that final discussion of peace that was outwardly, public. Asher, what are the prospects for peace with Saudi Arabia today? What do you feel is going to happen, let's say, after Trump takes office on the 20th?
the underlying logic for peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia very much still exists. The economic logic, the innovation logic, the defense logic, the common enemies, the shared aspirations for a future of stability and prosperity. We do have to take into account that October 7th, on the one hand, led to the downfall both of the Iranian axis, of the Hamas Muslim Brotherhood, on the other hand, very severely affected public opinion in the Arab world. We're already seeing, now even before President Trump officially takes office, renewed excitement, renewed interest, both vis-a-vis Israel's already, the current Abraham Accords partners, and other countries. Saudi Arabia is certainly one, but a number of other countries in Africa, in Asia, are also showing interest. We will have, I believe that we will be able to find common ground on the Palestinian issue. Certainly they understand, the Saudis understand very well Hamas, they understand, they sympathize with the Palestinian people, but understand the corruption of the Palestinian Authority. So I think the chances are very positive, not just for bilateral peace, but for world-changing multilateral initiatives in the field of trade, of energy, of defense that can change the region and the world.
And it's amazing to hear a story like this coming out of Syria, watching and waiting, but definitely feeling positive. Saudi Arabia and Fleur, I want to turn to you because, you know, as Asher was saying, there is a regional phenomenon. We've managed as Israel to be able to harm Hezbollah substantially, weaken Iran. We are on the cusp of having some kind of stability, hopefully on the southern border. You sit in the foreign ministry. Where do you see this going in the region? Take a look at 2025. Give me a little bit of hope for some kind of regional stability.
Well, I think that nobody understood, or certainly not Sinwar understood, that when he launched all hell on Israel's southern borders, when he thought that everybody would join in glee, that Hezbollah would join the very next day to destroy Israel, that Iran would help them destroy Israel, that Syria would help them destroy Israel. Never did he imagine that it was beginning of the unraveling of the jihadists in the region. But ultimately, we can talk until we're blue in the face. But what everybody's aim has to be is regime change in the Islamic Republic of Iran. They are the puppet master. They are the ones, the Houthis are still throwing rockets at us. And yesterday we had to attack. The Americans are very angry at the Houthis blocking the sea routes, which affects everybody economically. Saudi Arabia is still very suspicious of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so is everybody else. They are making strides in Africa, in certain of the Muslim countries in Africa. And so we can really play whack-a-mole. We've done a fantastic job in pushing and weakening Iran. But honestly, if we want a real legacy to this particular government and also Trump coming in, it has to be the beginning of the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran and nothing less. Until that happens,
I'm sorry,
everything will be unstable.
So I want to turn to you, Rowan, because specifically that is a really important question for you. Iran, what can we do to support the people of Iran to bring about this regime change?
Iran is next. You finished the job in Lebanon, you turned into Syria, and now it's time to deal with the Iraqi militias, but that is not so complicated. Go for Iran. Don't back down. I was reading yesterday a report. Schools in Iran shutting down, not for security reasons. They can't afford electricity. They have never been weaker. Go for it. Because the Iranian people deserve better. It breaks my heart that I was able, as a Syrian, to enjoy this moment of the fall of the monster of the century. But I hope the Iranians will be able to celebrate that the Iraqis can build back their country. The Turks enjoy relatively a secular country, but Erdogan has to understand that he's not living in a historical film. It's not a movie. People die. And people chose, the normal people. They want a different Middle East for their children.
Now, Fleur, what role then can technology and innovation play in helping to bring about this change and foster additional collaboration?
Well, absolutely. Like Asha said, there's a lot of renewed excitement about economic collaborations. And before I co-founded the UAE Israel Business Council, Asha's one of my founders as well. What we saw was that for 2-3 years, before that, before the actual Abraham Accords happened, there were 200 to 300 Israeli companies working in the UAE. And that's one of the reasons why we created the UAE Israel Business Council, to give a framework to the work that was already going on. Well, I'm very pleased to say there's already 200-300 companies, at least Israeli companies, working through third parties or white labeling, that are already in Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of activity already in Saudi Arabia. And so it's very exciting to see. And an interesting theory that I heard recently is that maybe other countries will come before Saudi Arabia, which will give Saudi Arabia the final push. There's a change of government in Indonesia. Maybe that will help. And many other countries, certainly in Africa, there's a lot of countries, even the Muslim countries or the majority Muslim countries, are showing a lot of interest.
So, Asher, what is something that we need to do to ensure that Fluor's vision comes to fruition?
We need to look at new and innovative, not just bilateral projects, but, as I was mentioning, multilateral projects. This is something that at the Miskav Institute for National Security, which I direct, and Fleur is one of our senior fellows there, we're working on projects like the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, frameworks like a Middle East Defense Alliance, renewed, we've been working on something called the Abraham Accords Innovation Network, renewed cooperation on energy, renewable energy and traditional energy. These kinds of projects involve numerous countries. They involve also Abraham Accords countries, but also allies and partners like the United States, like India. They enable shared prosperity. The defense cooperation will allow the U.S. to become less involved in conflicts and focus on other theaters, which are on their priority. So it's really a win-win for all of us.
Rowan, this conference is called Lights of Hope. We are lighting the candle now of regional stability. Take a view to next year and tell me, do you have hope for regional stability in 2025? In 1 minute, why?
I can see it before my eyes. People asked me, like, why do you say you feel so confident when you say Israel will prevail? Because you have to choose a side, and I chose the side, the right side, the side of modernity, civilization, against an axis of evil, a cult of death. I saw it, and if we cannot imagine, even imagine peace in the region, how are we going to achieve it? So you have to believe it. Korim leze imuna. It's happening before our eyes. If it was mathematical, Israel was dramatically outnumbered. Look at what's happening. If this is not magical, what is?
Well, I think on that sentiment, it is definitely worth closing the panel. Thank you all so much for being here. Rowan, Asher, and Fleur, thank you for your time. Tonight, we are honored to welcome a special guest, Minister Ofer Sofer, Israel's Minister of Aliyah and Integration. He will be interviewed by ILTV anchor Lidar Gravey-Lazi.
Minister Sofer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we are now in a time of unprecedented anti-Semitism, especially in the West. Has this had any impact on Aliyah?
I think that everyone see that. We see the numbers of people that decided to make Aliyah, that making Aliyah, that interested in Aliyah. And I think that we experience when we meet them, we experience their solidarity, their feeling, what they say, and what is the reason that they decided to make Aliyah. And I think that this is the strong thing, that their decision comes from a very deep place in their heart of solidarity and connection to our people.
And you're seeing this interest in Aliyah even after October 7th, even after the very difficult year that we've had here in Israel.
As I said, and I talked about the last year, that we see the numbers after the 7 October. We see more than 30,000 Olim since 7 October. And we see this environment or this desire of the people to come to make Aliyah. You look on their eyes of the people that decided to make Aliyah. You hear what they say, and you understand that they make Aliyah because of the reason of solidarity, because of the reason that they want to be part of our people.
And from which countries are you seeing the most interest, the most Aliyah?
I think that the change is in the West. The change is in Britain, in United States, in France, and And I believe that my role is to take these numbers and to make it to normal, to stable these standards of numbers.
How do you plan to breathe new life into Aliyah and absorption?
We build a lot of programs with students that support students, that help them with the Hebrew, and that the first years they learn in English. We build a system that will support the Olim, all Olim from the initially, from the beginning of the process of Aliyah till they will be here in Israel. And we build diversity options for study, for learning Hebrew. We also support in housing, in rent, in text that will help them to buy a home in Israel.
And on the one hand, we're seeing this increase in Aliyah numbers, but we're also seeing the opposite trend. We're also seeing Israelis leaving the country, after such a year. It's, of course, understandable. But is there anything being done to sort of combat this trend of Israelis leaving?
I think that I have to deal with the positive things. Israel has experienced a very difficult war where it is historic days. And the people that understand that decided to come to Israel and to make Aliyah. We have to care about that the economy will be strong, and the defense of Israel will be strong. This is what we have to care about.
And tonight we're celebrating Hanukkah. We're here at this conference, the Lights of Hope. What would your message be to the diaspora, to Jews who are thinking of making Aliyah, perhaps a message of hope?
I think that in Hanukkah we celebrated the Gvura Yehudit.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of stories of soldiers and civilians of Gvura. And to make Aliyah, it's also Gvura. It's a very difficult process. And we make all our efforts to smooth the process and to make it easy. But after all, it's difficult. It's difficult, but it's Gvura Yehudit Gdola to come to Israel and to make Aliyah, and we appreciate this decision.
Heroism. Minister Sofer, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and happy Hanukkah.
Thank you very much.
Now we turn to a very special panel representing the light of Tikkun Olam, the actions we take to repair and improve our world. Tonight we are honored to feature representatives from Save a Child's Heart. Save a Child's Heart is dedicated to saving the lives of critically ill children suffering from heart disease in countries where access to pediatric cardiac care is either limited or even non-existent. By bringing children to Israel for life-saving treatments, conducting medical missions abroad, and training medical professionals, this organization brings hope to families, communities, and even entire nations. It is my privilege to welcome Simon Fisher, Executive Director of Save a Child's Heart, Dr. Zachias Mundemulu, a fellow in pediatric cardiac surgery at the National Heart Hospital in Zambia, and Dr. Lior Sasson, head of pediatric cardiac surgery at Wolfson Medical Center and lead surgeon for Save a Child's Heart. Let's hear their incredible story.
So thank you all for joining us today. And Dr. Sasson, I'd like to start with you. So I understand that just today you operated on an Israeli child suffering from a heart condition. Can you maybe tell me what these operations mean to the children and what they mean for their families?
Thank you for having us here. It's true, I just came out of a surgery of an Israeli child, 2.8 kilograms. It's a tiny baby that was born with congenital heart disease. It means that it's a bone defect in the heart, in the vessels coming out of the heart. And it requires emergent surgery, urgent surgery. Otherwise, there might be very serious problems. So, and you know, when you have parents, young parents, waiting for the child to be born, and he's born with a problem in the heart. So it's really devastating. And we need to tell the parents what we're going to do, and they are in great stress. But fortunately, everything went well, and we expect the child to live normal and lead normal life. And for me as a surgeon, it's a great... the words cannot describe what I feel when I can tell the parents that everything is going to be okay. And knowing that this child will have normal life, happy life, like any other children.
Incredible. And, you know, not just in Israel, I know that you also recently led the mission to Zambia. Can you maybe share what this mission entailed and sort of its overall impact?
Yes. The team of doctors, the medical team of doctors in Volson Medical Center actually founded the NGO, which is called Save a Child's Heart. And on its flag is written to give better cardiac care for children in Israel and out of Israel, in the partner countries in the world. And I just came with my team from Zambia. We operated on 12 children and catheterization on 12 children. For me, it was very unique situation because I actually was there monitoring two of my trainees that were trained here in Israel, like Dr. Muli. They spent a few years here and they became cardiac surgeon. And Save a Child's Heart made two countries, Zambia and Tanzania, work together. And the team from Tanzania that was trained before came and helped the team of Zambia. So on top of saving children, it brings countries together. It brings Israel, Zambia, and Tanzania together.
And so can you tell us a little bit about the training program that you just mentioned, you know, what it looks like, maybe share some specific success stories from the recent mission to Zambia that maybe inspired you?
We are now in, like, Chanukah is approaching and we are talking about miracles. And, you know, we are going to our partner countries to operate on a child. But suddenly, a woman, 42 years of age, came to us with congenital heart disease that we're afraid to deal with. The heart was big as a watermelon. It was amazing, and I can understand why they were reluctant to do anything. But with the help of the local team, I operated on her, and we saved her life. And this is amazing because, you know, she had, I don't know how she managed to do it. She had 3 children, and she suffered a lot. She couldn't breathe well. And now this operation gives her more years to live. Otherwise, she may die, you know, in the next few years with 3 small children. So I think it's really amazing. And the thing is that the team that we trained are working together side by side and helping each other. That amplifies the effect of Save a Child's Heart and the effect of Israel on the world. And this is I find it very exciting.
Modern day miracle, I think you could call it.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mulu, I want to turn to you now. So you're a fellow from Zambia, and I want to ask, you know, what was your first perception of Israel when you arrived, and how has that perception perhaps changed over time?
Thank you very much. I find it a great privilege to be in this country and to be talking to you at this time. I'm coming from Zambia, one of the 70 countries that have had this opportunity to be helped by Save a Child's Heart. My country has a population of about 20 million, and for years we've not had heart operations being done on children. So when Save a Child's Heart offered to help my country, this gave a lot of hope to so many children and families. You have a child with a heart problem and you do not have the medical expertise to help your child, there's no hope. And so from 2017, when Save a Child's Heart started to help Zambia with treating children and also training professionals, this has changed. So I am now coming in as a second-generation surgeon, we have a team that has already been built by Save a Child's Heart to conduct these operations right from home. And so my coming was a joyful moment. It was not scary, I would like to mention, because I had people that had gone before me. And so I talked with them before I could come. They told me how the training is and how everything happens. And looking at a number of people that have been trained over years and they've gone back home to do the work, I knew that it would work out for me. So it is a dream come true for me, if you like. And that is what it has been.
And so can you tell me a little bit about your training? How long does it take? What does it entail? And what do you hope to accomplish when you return to Zambia?
Thank you. So when you have a child with a heart problem and you need to repair that defect through surgery, you need a surgeon, like my mentor here, to do the operation, but you need somebody who is going to have that child sleep. You need somebody else who is going to monitor the heart-lung machine when the heart is being worked on. You need the nurse who is going to work with the team, the instruments and everything, and you need somebody who is going to take care of this child after the operation is done. In short, you need a teamwork. So our training is quite unique in that Save a Child's Heart has been training a team. So we already have one surgeon back home, Dr. Ziwa, who was trained for 5 years, and I'm also training for 5 years now in my second year. So we have a surgeon there. We have Dr. Kangwa Michael, an anesthesiologist, that is the person who is getting the child to sleep, who is working there. We have Felix, the perfusionist. This is now the one who is working on the heart-lung machine during the operation. And I have a colleague who is also still in training, Dr. Luara, who is the intensivist. So he's the one taking care of the child after the operation. So we are all being trained from one environment, learning one routine and communicating one language. This makes the whole procedure a success.
And Simon, I'd like to turn to you now. So, Zambia and Tanzania, as we just heard Dr. Mulu say, they recently began working together for Save a Child's Heart. And can you address maybe a little bit of sort of what makes this collaboration so significant, and how does it go beyond, simply connecting Israel with Africa to sort of create, maybe perhaps lasting change?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having us here today, and I think it's exciting to hear about the miracles, the miracle of the 42-year-old woman who received her life back, and the story of Jonathan, which is going to be played, is being played in the background. These are children who had no chance if it wasn't for Save a Child's Heart. And I think, in essence, Save a Child's Heart talks Tikkun Olam. And we talk about Israel reaching out to the world with the best of Jewish values. I think one of the most beautiful things that we've faced in Zambia last week, it's not only about Israel reaching out to the world, but it's actually that different partners partnering with Save a Child's Heart. If it's a Jakaya Kikwete Cardiac Institute from Tanzania, and if it's the National Heart Hospital from Zambia, these are hospitals whose doctors have been trained by us here in Israel, by Save a Child's Heart of Boston Medical Center. And you have surgeons who are working together. I think one of the greatest moments for Dr. Sasson here was actually entering to the surgery of young Jonathan, first surgery, and he was watching these two surgeons, Dr. Godwin Godfrey, who trained with us some 15 years ago, and Dr. Ziwa from Zambia, who only finished training 2 years ago. And the two of them were operating, and they were saving the lives. You should have seen the smile and satisfaction in Dr. Sasson's eye, the glitter and the glimmer of hope for these children, because we as Israelis are so proud to be able to contributing towards the world, to making our world a better place. And it can't but not be said that this is against all odds. Since October 7th, we've found ourselves in a very, very difficult situation, and against all odds, Israel is reaching out to the world and showing the better and the best face of Israel, reaching out in a humanitarian way, saving lives, teaching, giving knowledge. And the beauty is it is not only done by Israelis, but is done by Israelis in partnership with Tanzanians and in partnership with Zambians.
Absolutely. So it's really an international collaboration. And you mentioned, of course, Tikkun Olam. And I also want to ask, how this effort complements Israel's healthcare needs, particularly the Sylvan Adams Children's Hospital and the Wolfson Medical Center.
Yeah, well, first of all, we're very proud that all our activities take place at Wolfson Medical Center. And most recently, I'd say in the past 2 years, at the Sylvan Adams Children's Hospital, which is the home of Save a Child's Heart. This was quite an effort on the part of the organization. It was a $65 million project that Save a Child's Heart has led. It's a 7th-floor children's hospital, which benefits, first of all, Israeli children, but also the activities of Save a Child's Heart. And most recently, I would say, since October 7th, we've been extremely busy with trying to support the hospital in terms of its preparedness for war. And we've actually raised, I would say, over $3 million for medical equipment needed by Wolfson. And most recently, we've embarked on a new project together with the Arison Foundation to create a new emergency, a pediatric emergency building for the children of Wolfson, which means southern Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Cholyon, western Rishon LeZion. So the idea is that Save a Child's Heart is not only helping the children of the world, but is also promoting Israel and the best possible healthcare for the country.
An incredible message, especially on Hanukkah. Simon, Dr. Sasson, and Dr. Mulu, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Our next candle represents the light of sustainability, a commitment to saving both people and our planet. Gigawatt Impact is a groundbreaking nonprofit dedicated to scaling renewable energy in the world's least developed countries and vulnerable rural communities by leveraging venture philanthropy. Gigawatt Impact develops utility-scale, community-based renewable energy projects. These efforts empower communities with financial and environmental independence while addressing racial and economic injustice. To discuss their transformative work, we are joined by 3 remarkable guests. First, Weldon Turner, co-founder of Gigawatt Impact. Weldon oversees operational management, strategy, and implementation, as well as finance for the organization. Next, Yosef Abramowitz, also a co-founder of Gigawatt Impact. Yosef is a visionary leader in renewable energy, recognized globally for his impact. He was nominated by 12 African countries for the Nobel Peace Prize, and he has pioneered solar projects across the continent. Finally, we welcome Patrick Nitsunga. Patrick previously served as the Deputy Managing Director of a Gigawatt Global project, bringing solar energy to Burundi. He is now poised to lead the organization's activities across Africa. Let's learn more about their inspiring vision and impact. Well, thank you so much for being here, Yosef, Patrick, and Weldon. I want to go ahead and jump right in with a question for you, Yosef, if that's okay. You and your team have developed significant renewable energy projects, such as the 7.5 megawatt solar PV plant in Burundi, which increased the country's electricity capacity by 14%. Now, Yosef, could you start by elaborating on the challenges you faced in financing a project like that and how the establishment of your new nonprofit aims to address those challenges?
Thank you, Marianne. So 18 years ago, I arrived in the Arava, and it was the same time that the region in the south of Israel got $1 million grant from UJA Federation of Toronto. And it started us off on our journey, which we ended up deploying $400 million of investments there. It's the first time I understood some grant money can unlock big investment money. And so in a very poor country like Burundi, it's very hard for investors to get their minds around investing serious money there. There's a lot of risks. So here the philanthropic community really plays a very, very important role, both in doing some of the studies and the community work, corporate social responsibility programs, the water pump, and other things that we're doing there. We just fired up 200,000 of these bricks to add 6 classrooms for 1,400 students that are cramming into very few classrooms, for example. So that's the role of philanthropy. But then Patrick and our other partners were able to bring in the largest investment in Burundi's energy history with the building of that field. And it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the philanthropic money to pave the way.
So really the philanthropy was the catalyst for the investments.
Absolutely. Galvanizes the for-profit community. If philanthropy will open the door and de-risk.
So it's interesting, and you mentioned, Patrick, I think people need to understand a little bit more about what you're doing. There is this abundance initiative that you're running, and I want you to talk about that, because what I understand is that it's aiming to quadruple the income of poor women farmers in Uganda. Share specific strategies, technologies that you're using in order to achieve this kind of goal, and tell me, is this something that, if you are successful in Uganda, can you bring it further across Africa?
Yeah, thank you, Mayan. Before I jump on that question, I always argue on the fact how they characterize Africa. Yosef, he knows very much that we had this discussion. None of the African country is poor. Okay. There is a situation where those countries are not fully integrated into the international financial system, and some markets are struggling to be market economies to create the conditions of attracting foreign investments.
Meaning they have the resources.
They have the resources, they have the talents, they have everything they need, but there is the lack of structural conditions that can abide with international performance standards. So I'm not from a poor country, and Africa is not a poor continent. There is a work to be done in order to create the conditions to meet the international investment performance standards and unlock the potential that is there. So that was very clear, important for me to clarify. And on Uganda, we had a very significant discussion internally into the company. We were then with Yosef to try to state the problem. And the problem here is that the rural communities in Africa, they don't have access to electricity. But 90% of them are farmers, meaning that their main activity, their main income are coming from the agriculture. So in the company, we said we were doing on-grid projects. We build power plants, we connect to the national utility, and they sell the electricity, we collect the payment. And now we wanted to change the model. The abundance means the combination of access to electricity for rural communities, but for production purposes. We take a look at the activities that are happening, mainly agriculture, and we make sure that the framework, the CIC, the Community Infrastructure Center, we want to make sure that we can build an infrastructure within the community, and with the energy and the power facilities that we're building, we can connect those communities. And the problem statement that we saw, there's a significant loss in post-harvest and commodity value. Mainly people, they are middlemen people. When the poor farmers, women are farming, the middlemen who come and go.
There's no poor farmers. It's not a poor country.
It's a poor. It's a situation that I'm describing that is prevailing in those communities, and we're bringing a solution in terms of connecting them to the electricity and help them to increase the production and subsequently increase their income and the revenues. So the strategy here is to build a power facility and connect those communities and make like a one-stop shop in the community where those farmers can be directly connected to the power facility and use that electricity to increase the production. And we can talk about storage, we can talk about agro-processing or the thing.
And will this be a model that you can move across the rest of Africa if successful?
Because many rural communities in Africa have similarities. It's almost the same if you go from Uganda to Rwanda to South Sudan, you find the situation that they are off-grid, they are not connected. And the way of producing in agriculture is almost the same. So we believe that with the pilot that we're doing in Chenjojo in Uganda can be easily replicated, and we can raise a revolution in Africa. And I always said that we can make happen the peace, the stability people need, and most importantly, you know, there's millions of money that are spent in stopping the illegal immigration. If we can create the income for those communities, we'll be able to retain the young people into their communities and solve the migration crisis that is haunting our Western world.
Wow, it's a beautiful vision. I want to make sure that we get some time also to speak to you, though. Weldon, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund has been actively engaging with Israeli institutions to explore joint research projects and student exchange programs aiming to enhance sustainable agriculture practices. Now, tell me, integrating Israeli agrivoltaic, am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Technology with capacity building programs at historically black colleges and universities is actually a very unique approach. So how do you see this collaboration actually enhancing sustainable agriculture practices in the U.S. and now and in the future?
I think it's a great question. And one of the things we need to note is that Israel really is at the forefront of agrovoltaic, plant science, and all kinds of agricultural sciences, whether it's hardware or software. And the ability, these projects will bring that technology and that knowledge to the United States, which is the biggest consumer market in the world. And it's the biggest food consumer market in the world. And we do it one step at a time. And I think this is the real opening to provide the Israeli technology to be able to move into the United States.
That's actually an incredible long-term vision. And Yosef, I know you're at the forefront of this vision and want to kind of piggyback on what Weldon is saying to ask you this. Considering the complexity, though, of funding these large-scale renewable projects in developing regions, not outside of the United States, what is going to be your team's approach to the blended finance de-risk investment model? Have you observed any successes that give us hope and take us, into 2025?
So we've actually pioneered this model. I mean, we have Israeli know-how, and then we got grants in Rwanda, and for every dollar we got philanthropically when we built the first solar field in all of sub-Saharan Africa and Rwanda, every dollar that came in there, we brought in $25 of investment. Same thing in Burundi. Every dollar we got of grant money, we brought in $25. So the leverage play is glorious. And, basically, if our nonprofit, Gigawatt Impact, can have access to $5 to $10 million a year in grant money, we're going to bring to the resource-poor nations of Africa between $500 million and $1 billion between now and 2030.
Incredible. Patrick, give me a success story. Inspire us a little bit. I mean, you talked about an incredible model, but I want to know about a woman, somebody who's succeeded, a farm, based on the work that you've done.
One of the core people, the stakeholders that we are engaging with, they are women farmers in Chenjojo. They own cooperative. They are the ones that are very active in understanding that they have to come together. And when we were meeting them and do community engagement meetings, they were on the forefront of saying, we want this to happen. And they really understand the advantage of using electricity to enhance what they are already doing. And a part of that, it's like that women cooperative day. It's basically the group of people that is holding the community together. And if you look at what they do and how entrepreneurial they are, we have hope that focusing on them, and that's what I mentioned about capacity building, training them in terms of basic management, financial management, understanding how they can work together using the electricity. I think the cooperative of women are my heroes, and that's a success story we want to build up on when implementing that project.
Also, I want to say Patrick and his partners on the ground there, bringing hope to the family, they already have the endorsement and the support of the Vice President of Uganda. We thank her, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Energy, and the Minister of Investments. So this is one of those rare times where there's already a success by bringing together different ministries in one of these countries. It's amazing.
Wow.
Now, I want to turn to you, Weldon, to conclude the panel because, looking ahead, what are the next steps for your collaboration with your Israeli partners and HBCUS? And, how do you foresee these efforts contributing to food security, renewable energy products, certainly in the U.S., certainly in Israel, but also in Burundi, Rwanda, and all over the world, ultimately?
I think one of the things that you have to really concentrate on and focus on is that climate volatility will be dealt with and attenuated only by a portfolio of both technology and science. And that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be one product. It's not going to be one country. And that's really what we're focusing on. To feed 8 billion people in the world, and to do it with climate justice and with good science requires agrovoltaics. It's going to enhance food security. It's going to expand the crop production. It's good in a business sense, it's good in geopolitical sense, and it's good in the science sense. And that's one of the things we want to do. We're going to work with students, we're going to work with universities, we're going to work with farmers, and we're going to work with Israeli technology and scientists. And that portfolio of knowledge will hopefully help us be very successful.
And in another generation, hopefully we will then see a healthier and more productive world and people being able to live and survive with the resources that they need. Thank you, Yosef, Patrick, and Weldon for being here today.
Thank you.
Before we light the next candle, we are honored to welcome another special guest, Minister Amichai Shikli, Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism. Let's take a look.
Minister Shikli, thank you so much for being here today.
Okay.
Now, 2024 has been an extremely challenging year for the Jewish people. We have seen an incredible spike in anti-Semitism, actually worldwide. Do you have any indication that things could improve going into 2025, or at least are there new tools in place to help manage the crisis?
So first of all, the fact that it seems that the war is about to end. It ended in Lebanon. It ended in Syria border, and hopefully will end also in Gaza, and we will shift into a mode of random, regular operations like we see in Judea and Samaria, what we call in Hebrew batash, bitachon shotef, fluent security missions. So therefore, due to the fact that the war is over, the intensity of dealing with Israel and the Jews will naturally go down. This is one. Second, I think that we are much more organized today and much more aware of the dangers, and we do have new tools to track anti-Semitism. For instance, we've established here the Mashlat, because the Center for Controlling and Monitoring Anti-Semitism worldwide on the web, with abilities to forecast, for instance, what happened in Amsterdam. We saw it actually early evening, and we passed the information to the intelligence, and they passed it to the Netherlands authorities. So this is a very relevant tool. And therefore, I think, yes, we have new tools. The communities themselves have much more tools also.
Amazing. So before October 7th, there was actually a lot of discussion about the lack of connection by the diaspora Jews to Israel. After October 7th, I guess if you can call anything a silver lining, is that the Jewish people really came together and the unity increased. Do we have any indication that this is continuing now that it's been 15 months of war? And do you see that being something that will be able to support going into the next year?
So first, during the war, we have made one research to try and understand what are the amount of money that was literature by the Jewish community. We did it first and foremost. Let me be ready. What is the meaning of the support of the Jews that they have for us? So only from North America, at least $5 billion were invested, and that is a huge amount of money, and it is a symbol for the dedication and the commitment of the Jewish community to help the state of Israel. Most of the money went for the Otef, on the Lebanese border communities, soldiers, equipment, medic, hospitals, etc. So I think that this is a sign for the commitment of the Jewish diaspora. But also we saw endless events, campuses, community centers, on the streets. There was this huge demonstration in Washington. So these are pictures that we didn't get to see before. Obviously, it is because of the war, and we would prefer not
Right, of course.
Not
That's why
to
it's
ever.
hard to say a silver
Yeah,
lining,
but
right?
but the commitment and the emotional involvement of Jewish leaders, of Jewish communities, is being very, very significant. And I think that the war is devastating, but it's also an opportunity to strengthen the bridges between Israel and Jewish diaspora, to invest more in Jewish education, because I think that for the long term, combating anti-Semitism, it is only by education, making sure that young Jews are aware of their Jewish identity, Zionist identity. By the way, for me, Jewish and Zionist is one word. You cannot be Jew and not be a Zionist. If you read the Siddur, yes, it's all about Shivat Zion. So therefore, I think that we have an opportunity here to have a stronger Jewish community, to invest, and we are investing with Aleph Bet project a significant amount of money in empowering Jewish education, in empowering Jewish teachers in the diaspora in North America, but not just North America, but also other communities. We just hit the meeting with the community of Argentina 50 minutes ago. So that is the opportunity that we also have after the war.
And the Aleph Bet program, just so that our viewers know, is a program to invest in formal Jewish education. It's experimental for this year and will eventually expand money from Israel being matched in the state to support Jewish education. Now, there's much positive anticipation about the inauguration of President Donald Trump, him getting back into office, and many believe that it could be a new Middle East. I'm wondering, as a senior Likud minister, what is your vision for the region in the coming year? I mean, especially given, as you mentioned, the ceasefire in Lebanon, the fall of Assad in Syria, and of course, the pending ceasefire in Gaza.
Yes, so first, I highly appreciate the leadership of President Trump. We all remember the recognition in the Golan Heights, which is now on the news, as we know, and I think it's very important to mention Syria. The rebels in Syria, they have a very good PR. They have new suits, and their leader, Mohammed Ashara, is now a moderate. Yeah, but we also remember he was a member of ISIS. He was a member of Al Qaeda. And we need to be very, very clear regarding the truth. The truth is that ideologically, Syria is now controlled with the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, and Al Qaeda. It is the same ideology to create the Caliphate of Islam and to impose Sharia laws upon each and every citizen in that state. And we need to be very aware of it, because in an interview with the BBC, they were celebrating the victory of the rebels, saying, "Oh, they have changed." So we're not sure that they have changed, and we need to secure the border, meaning to base the border on the ceasefire line of 1974, and annexing the buffer zone that we withdrawal from, because we cannot afford another October 7 on our borders. And we need to bear in mind that the violation came first from the rebellions, went to attack a UN post in that zone. This is one. Going back to President Trump, we also remember the embassy in Jerusalem. And I think that regarding Judea and Samaria, when I'm very thrilled that we have also Mike Huckabee as the ambassador. I'm speaking about it, I'm saying I'm afraid he's going to ask to remove the embassy to Shiloh. because it was the original, even before. So, but seriously, I do think that there is a chance to make sure that we are setting permanent borders of the state of Israel, including Bikat HaYarden, Jordan Valley, including sea area. I think we need to finish with they say Siman Shela, with the question mark upon Eli, Ma'ale Adumim, Gush Etzion. Enough. This is the state of Israel, period. Nigmar. So this is mission number 2. And obviously, we remember, I'm going back to President Trump, the sanctions on Iran. When he left office, the income of Iran, oil income, were between 7 to 10 billion. Now, as the Biden administration is about to end, it is around 41 billion. This money went into the hands of the Houthis, the hands of Hezbollah, the hands of Hamas. Obviously, that was not the intention of the American administration, but that is the fact. That's what happened. And I think that bringing back the sanctions, making sure that there is no nuclear capabilities for Iran, encouraging and supporting the opposition in Iran. We're all aware of what's going on in Iran. The administration in Iran, the regime in Iran, they don't have the support of the people, and they need a push. They need to have the support. They need to have leaders like Trump who are well aware of the danger, and to make sure that we are helping the people of Iran to regain their freedom.
So, final question. We're about to enter the new year. What gives you hope for the future of Israel's relationship with Jewish communities abroad, and what steps can be taken to strengthen those ties going into 2025?
So, as I mentioned, one mission, Jewish education, and I will say it again, Jewish education, empower Jewish education. We are connected, not because we have maybe similar hair, which we don't have, by the way, but because we have the similar Torah, because we have the similar history, and because we shared Jewish values from the 10 Commandments and on. And as much as we increase the knowledge of Jewish education, and by the way, we also have a lot of work here in Eretz Israel, because for many Jews who lives here in Israel, they are unaffiliated. They speak Hebrew, but they are unaffiliated. And they say, it is religious. But for me, reading the Bible is also reading the best book that was ever written. It's not just religion; it's far more. It's history, it's culture, it's a drama.
It's actually good reading.
Yeah, it is a good reading, and I think that's what's connects us. And we need to make sure that we have the best teachers that can bring the emotional part of what it means to be a Jew. And I wish for every Jewish kid to know who is Rachel Imenu, who is Rachel, the wife of Rabbi Akiva, and who is Rachel the poet. Okay? Because these are layers, one upon another. And that is, I think, the mission that we have here in Israel and in the diaspora. And if we will have a common cultural background, then there's no need to do a lot of artificial actions to create the bridge, because we share the same history and the same culture. Obviously, each community has its own particular past and particular history. That's the beauty. But we do have the common ground. And the common ground is what we need to invest in, and to put all our weight in making sure that today, in a day of the smartphone and ChatGPT and Google, and people say, I have it on the Google. Yeah. Or now I can just ask ChatGPT who needs to read.
Yeah.
But then you lose if you don't read, and if you you don't repeat, you don't remember, you don't have the ability to understand the nuance of Jewish culture and to have a deep Jewish identity. And I think, and I once had a very fascinating conversation with Dan Sino about this issue, and he said, I wish for my kids to be serious Jews. And I really love this term of Sino, serious Jews. We're not asking my kids to be, I'm not asking my kids to be religious, but I want them to be serious Jews.
Yeah.
Know who you are. That is the main issue.
Minister Shikli, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Minister Shikli emphasized the importance of strengthening Jewish education. In Israel, the startup nation, we must also prioritize STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. At the forefront of shaping the next generation of engineers and high-tech leaders is Afeka College of Engineering in Tel Aviv. This institution is paving the way for Israel's future innovators across all fields. Representing the light of education, let's discover Israel's secret weapon.
Israel is the startup nation, and its high-tech sector is the country's key driver of economic growth. As such, it will play a crucial role in post-war recovery. Ensuring that Israel is prepared with the human capital needed to sustain this, both in quality and in quantity, begins with education, specifically the national STEM education continuum that feeds the technology workforce. To discuss this with me today are Professor Ami Mouyal, President of Afika Academic College of Engineering in Tel Aviv, and Dadi Perlmutter, a social and technological entrepreneur who is also the chairman of the Israeli High-Tech Human Capital Committee and former Executive Vice President of Intel. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dadi, I'll begin with you. Your committee made recommended reforms in education and academia for increasing high-tech employment. Can you briefly describe the recommendations of the committee you chaired regarding the STEM education continuum?
Sure, with pleasure. This is a thick document proposing major transformation of the education system, complete rethinking. So I'll go briefly over the top level and concepts. Message number one, this is not a one-shot and this is not any shortcut. This is a long process of education, process from womb to tomb, starting with kindergarten. But the last minute that the committee recommended to catch and be able to do anything is just prior to middle school. And it is all the way through high school, academia, the military service, as well as lifelong learning, which leads me to the second concept. This is an era of huge changes in technology and across the globe. Assuming that we can learn everything to be able to do our profession is the age of 50 years ago. Today, we have to assume that in anyone's job, in any point of time, he or she will not be able to do it without learning a new concept, a new material. So learning is a concept of all the time. Therefore, it is not just, and the committee recommended that we'll go to what we call the tech matriculation that includes math at a high level, physics and or computer science, and spoken English, which is critical for this one. This have to be woven with what we call the power skills, the ability to learn, self-learning abilities, the ability to work and learn in a team, the ability to solve complex open problems that you have not been able to, you were not known or taught how to solve it before. And last but not least, because this is all new, ability to learn and have the self-confidence and the self-criticism to be able to learn from your own mistakes, from your own failures. This is critical. Item 2, 3, this is not just high-tech. Tech skills are required in much broader sense in many professions beyond just tech. Number 4 is that we have to include other populations that are currently not included to a large extent into the tech. Arabs, ultra-Orthodox, and last but not least, women and people from the periphery, not from the center of Israel. Number 5, we have to understand the academy, which people try to think it's irrelevant anymore, is one of the most important factors, both on the research side and in the teaching and educating the next workforce is critical. And last but not least, and I know Ami will talk about in details, AI changes everything, not just for people that will develop AI, but people and professionals outside of tech industry that will be using AI as a tool and skill for the profession, let alone the rest of the population that not need to understand the basics of AI and how to use in day-to-day life. So this in short, the basics, and as all Dilel said, the rest you have to learn by yourself.
Thank you for that. And Ami, as we're saying, all of this comes at a time when the AI revolution is expected to transform teaching and learning processes and outcomes. What role does Israel's higher education system play along the entire national STEM education continuum in general, and specifically in the context of AI? And do you envision Israel's engineering colleges adapting their curricula to stay ahead of industry demands?
Okay, so I'll start by referring to or continuing the points that Daddy has raised with regard to the general role of the higher education in the STEM continuing education, and then I will refer specifically to AI and the influence of AI on the curricula at engineering education. So first of all, in general, I think that the academia has a vital role on the STEM educational continuum that Daddy has described, and I agree, in various aspects. And the full educational continuum, when we are talking about lifelong learning, is from kindergarten to middle school, high school. In Israel, the military service also, there are a lot of, in the military service, in technology occupations, then in the academia, in the industry, and then in reskilling, upskilling. So we are talking about a very long, lifelong learning cycle. In this sense, the academia has several major roles. The first and the classical one is to train engineers, computer science, data science, and other technology degrees on a bachelor degree, on a master degree, and on a PhD degree, because in certain roles in industry, in algorithms or advanced algorithms, you need master and PhD degrees. And of course, in research and in technology transfer to the industry to develop new advanced products. The second role is training good STEM teachers that we must have if we want to implement the change in the classical educational system. We need updated, relevant teachers. So the academia, another main role of the academia is to train excellent STEM teachers, which are the most important point is relevant. The third aspect is on lifelong learning. When engineers enter industry, they need updates with regard either to skills or to new knowledge areas. So the academia can play a major role also here together. And the last aspect that I strongly believe, and by the way, I have implemented all these aspects as a president, is a strong connection with the education system, even joint courses or teachers at high school working together with our faculty members. So just to conclude, a vital role on this continuum with several main aspects of it. In general, first of all, to admit, I'm working in speech recognition, which is part of AI, for more than 25 years. So I'm dealing with AI on a daily basis. I was not surprised by AI capabilities. The main issue it has that now billions of people have easy access to AI. In our strategic planning at AFECA and thinking largely on higher education system, it will change everything. Teaching, learning, research, service to students, service to faculty, internal administrative work, it will change everything. But the main focus will be on teaching and learning, and then I will connect it to the previous point. We are putting an emphasis on what Daddy has mentioned earlier, instilling skills in addition to knowledge. Once you have ChatGPT and AI tools that are gathering several papers, summarizing them, and giving you the result that you once needed to do it by yourself as a student, the importance of the skills is much larger. In this case, you would need critical thinking as a must in order to analyze the result of the AI tools, and creativity in order to put your own 2 cents into the work that you are performing. So in general, my view, teaching and learning would be completely changed, and we will need to adapt in the rhythm that we are able to adapt as human beings, because technology is running fast. Last sentence, you asked me about the adaptation of engineering schools to the new curricula. Yes, I see the vast majority of engineering schools in Israel that are implementing a change, each engineering school by its way, putting more emphasis on instilling skills like critical thinking, self-learning, multidisciplinary teamwork, working with the industry together, and changing pedagogy instead of giving a talk or a frontal lecture to 300 students, working in smaller groups and focusing on implementing projects that has an impact on the industry, on our society. So yes, definitely I see the change. Also, I think that the change is slower than it should be, but we are on the right way.
Thank you. Now, this question goes to both of you. How can the public and private sectors collaborate more effectively to scale Israel's high-tech workforce and maintain its position as a global innovation leader? Ami, you go first.
Thank you. First of all, again, I would like to refer a word that Daddy has mentioned, that we need a revolution. So in my words, we need a major change, where in this change, everybody should participate. It should start by the government, continue to the Ministry of Education, Higher Education, Innovation Authority, industry, education system, academia. We need to sit all together, and I believe that within a short while we'll have a national STEM education committee that is composed of all the groups and people that I've mentioned, and we need to set targets looking forward 5 years, although these times it's very hard to design, everything is changing, but we need to set goals on a multi-year level, on a strategic point of view, where all the educational continuum stages are working on the same terminology and working in cooperation. This is the only way that I think we can arrive to an optimal national working point, which is excellent.
And Daddy, what do you think?
Just kind of following, I think education, you know, if there was only one thing to pick, I'll pick the K to 12 education. This is where everything, you know, even kindergarten, like, this is where everything begins. If you talk about weaving skills into knowledge that both Ami and myself talk about, is critical. Kids know how to do that. They just go back to school and kind of getting to sitting in a chair and trying to learn something. And the whole thinking of teaching today is the mechanics of history. You learn dates, you don't understand history. You learn math, you know how to solve a problem, but you don't to solve an equation, but you don't fully understand. So the issue is moving from learning and skills into the understanding of the concept. I think we need to make a big change in the way we, the public and the government, look at education, because everybody says education is the most important thing. At the end of the day, well, by our action, it is not. It's not an issue of a budget. It's an issue of focus. It's an issue of who we as a public, do we admire the teachers of our children and grandchildren, or we like to laugh at them? Are we trying to bring the best? And this is a government policy, but also public opinion, that teachers are the most important job, that without them, nothing happens. Without that, we'll not be able to make this transformation we talked about of the education, from sitting in the class and learning something to experiencing the learning topic and experiencing what we learn. This requires combinations of both formal and informal education. We are not good at that today. This requires a lot of people from the industry, the public, to join forces and help in educating the teachers, both the existing teachers and the new teachers, and influencing the way things are being done. There's a lot of work to do. I believe it's possible. And if you're not going to do that, then we are going to be in trouble. If we are able to do that, I think we're going to jump in our abilities and competing with the rest of the world in a significant and wonderful manner.
Thank you, Daddy. I'm actually a university teacher myself, so I can very much relate to what you're saying. And last question to you, Ami. What should be prioritized to ensure Israel has the skilled workforce needed to develop crucial technologies like the next Iron Dome? Briefly, if you can answer.
Yeah, I'll do it briefly, but in this case also I agree with Eddie. The focus should be on K to 12, on younger ages, because we need to encourage the students to learn STEM, and we see that in the age of 6, 7, or even 8, they don't want to study the STEM or the science. And we need to encourage them from young ages to like it, and then it will be a pipeline that arriving to the academia.
Thank you very much to the both of you, Professor Ami Moyal and Dadi Perlmutter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we turn to two remarkable Israeli entrepreneurs and innovators who are making a profound impact in the biotech space, an industry dedicated to saving lives. Joining us today is Noam Salman, CEO and co-founder of Immuneye. His company collaborates with pharmaceutical partners to advance immunotherapies powered by a proprietary and comprehensive AI model of the immune system. He is joined by Karine Noy, emerging science and innovation lead at Pfizer. Karine is passionate about precision medicine and its potential to revolutionize healthcare and save countless lives. Representing the light of innovation, let's hear their stories. Noam, Karine, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting us over.
Of course, I want to get started. Noam, Immuneye is revolutionizing how we map the immune system with tools like Amica. And Karine, you've spoken extensively from what I've seen about precision medicine's potential to tailor treatments for patients. I want you each to take a moment to tell me a little bit about what you do and how your respective technologies are redefining the approach we take to complex diseases. Noam, why don't you start?
Sure, happy to. So today, when you have drug candidates, they're already tested in the lab, in mice, etc. You go to the clinical trials, and the process takes more than 10 years. It costs more than $2 billion, and unfortunately, 95% of investments fail. And the question is why? The reason is that human beings respond differently to therapeutics. And they respond differently to therapeutics because the immune system is very different. So Immuneye decided to tackle this problem and map the human immune system, and to build an AI model for the immune system that will allow us to predict human response to therapeutics.
Karine, what about you? What is your role with Pfizer here?
So my role is to bring innovation or identify companies, good companies like Immuneye that can help not just with precision medicine, but also how to improve the probability of success of our clinical trials. So as Noam said, if it's so hard to develop the drugs and match them to the right patients. So we identify those challenges across drug development, and especially on the clinical trial side. How do we identify the right drug for the right patients at the right time?
Now, both of you are using artificial intelligence to advance your work. How is AI enabling insights that were previously unattainable in drug development and patient care? Maybe you can each share a specific example or case study where the work has really come to fruition and transformed the patient outcomes. Karine?
So, yeah, we've been looking at AI for many years. I mean, obviously, machine learning and AI is not a new topic, but with the advent of large language models and ChatGPT that we see now everywhere, we're looking at how do we leverage all the massive amount of data that is out there, both on the molecular side and also on the patient and the clinical side, and how can we learn in order to be able to then predict, okay, what are the features that can then help us to, as I mentioned earlier, to identify the right drug for the right patient at the right time.
And Noam, what about you? A case study or success story?
Yeah, sure. So maybe just to relate to the ChatGPT, I think ChatGPT and the companies that are using natural language processing are kind of organizing or mining the non-data. But there are companies such as Immuneye that are creating new types of data. Like Immuneye is mapping the immunome, the immune system, where we are profiling your immune system. And we have created this massive data set called Amica, which is the largest annotated multi-omic immune cell atlas with clinical data. And this allows us to train similar models, large foundation models that are allowing us to mine insights about the immune system from data sets that are otherwise unavailable. And I think, a couple of success stories, we were able to find the optimal dose for a drug. So just knowing that a molecule is not enough. It's not a therapy. You need to decide what is the dose, what is the schedule. With AI and our predictive modeling, we're able to optimize those. Another example, for an oncology drug, we're able to find the optimal combination agent. So what chemotherapy or anti-drug conjugate you want to give in combination with an immune agent. And I think those success stories are showing us that this is the right path to move forward and really understand more and more of the immune reasons why patients respond or resist response.
So Noam, you and I were talking earlier about how we're not necessarily here in Israel the leader in biotech, but in fact we are creating a number of advancements in many international companies like your own. You're Israeli, but you have hubs all over the world, or Pfizer, which is of course not inherently an Israeli company, is building innovation in the biotech industry here in Israel. What is it that makes Israel unique and different that helps us to drive that innovation despite the many challenges here in the country?
So Israel has 4 sites, R&D sites all over the world. We have one in New York where the headquarters are. We have a large one here in Tel Aviv. We have one in Zurich and one in Prague. And of course, in each of the sites, we have different capabilities and strengths. But the engineering space here in Tel Aviv, where we do the combio, the machine learning, the software engineering, is definitely, I think, one of the leading engineering hubs in biotech, I think all over, for smaller biotechnology companies. And I think it is a result of a few factors. The first one is that we have amazing engineering in Israel. We have the technological units, A200 and the likes, that have created an amazing ecosystem. We have so many startups and IT companies succeeding, and we can tap into this source and bring amazing talent into the company. I think another aspect is the culture. We have a very strong mentality of getting things done, and bringing things to the finish line successfully. We've seen it this year. We've seen it in other years. When you give people in Israel a task, they're going to, get it done.
Now, I want to turn to you, Corinne, to talk about that, but also, to piggyback on Noam, but take it even a step further in terms of international collaborations. Because Pfizer, again, is an international company. They're utilizing a lot of innovation, research, and development here in the country. Your role specifically, while it's international, it's amazing that it's based here in Israel. Tell me a little bit about how those partnerships are driving, the system forward, and go from there.
But first, actually, to continue on the advantages of Israel and what we are seeing here, when we're looking for companies, so it's the combination of, I think, everything that Noam said in just one country. So it's the first, a very established tech ecosystem that have been proven for a long time. That's together with the excellence in life sciences that we see in the very strong research coming from the academic institutions. And on top of this, there is also the very good healthcare system that has a closed loop of the medical provider as well as the insurance companies, and together creating also a very strong data sets of all the patients and on a longitudinal aspect. So in terms of small companies, if you think about the drug development process, it's so complicated, because we are starting from discovery of new targets, and then for those targets, we need to validate them, we need to identify molecules and design them. And then on the translational side, to find how to match them to the right patients, and then to take them even forward to advanced clinical trials, as well as then on to medical and commercial. And for all this, if we are splitting the efforts and using small companies to answer different challenges and needs across this super complicated process, it's a big plus.
Yeah, the mission statement is to use our technology to improve drug approval that ultimately will improve patient outcome.
And Noam, it's been a really difficult year. I mean, how has your decision-making or your priorities shifted since October 7th and the 15 months of war?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Of course, there is always the national and the personal, and this was a very difficult year on a national level. It was also a difficult year, on a personal level. But after a few weeks, because on the first week of the war, about 10% of the workforce was called on reserve duty. So we had to cope. A lean and mean startup that is very efficient. Now you have 10% less of the workforce with key employees. And we made a decision, like after a week, we are going to deliver. And not only are we going to deliver, we're going to be the best company that can deliver it. Because we were concerned when this started whether our large pharma collaborators are going to decide if they want to work with Immunai or not. So if they have maybe another company that is like Immunai, equally good, maybe they're going to choose a different company. So we said, no, we even have to be better than we were before. So I think the choice was to succeed, to deliver, and to be the best in what we do. It wasn't easy. It was a rough year. It built a very strong culture, resilience, getting things done. I actually like to say getting shit done because sometimes it's like very difficult. You move on, you persevere, and I think it's still a tough year, but we've concluded on the business side we're very successful here.
And we felt that most of the company that we worked with in Israel were actually trying to deliver even more, like even faster and more deliverables than we would expect them, especially since they lost so many employees that went to serve their duty, or some people even like volunteered. But we felt that we got a lot more deliverables than we would have gotten otherwise. And even with Ion Labs that we established here, we were able actually since October 7th to establish 8 companies. And
just so that people know, Ion Labs is an AI innovation lab for pharmaceuticals that is a hub here in Israel, right, working with international companies.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about Ion Labs as part of the international partnerships that you mentioned, because it's amazing that in a small country like Israel, we were able to establish this big alliance of the 4 largest pharma companies in the world and AWS, Amazon, and to establish companies that can answer the pharma needs. So 8 of the companies were able to establish since October 7th, and the majority of them are already in partnership with us, and we are working on validating their technology. So it's very impressive. And in a small country like Israel, but maybe because of the way things work here and the network that we have, because of the connections from the army, it's the only place where competitive companies like this could get together.
Makes sense. Now, I want to end on looking to the future. The conference is called Lights of Hope, and the idea of this particular panel is the light of innovation, and we're thinking about how is Israeli innovation going to bring us forward into next year, into the next years, in a way that will be, please God, much lighter than it was this past year. And Noam, why don't you give me some hope for the future, for your work and for the country?
I'm actually starting 2025 with a lot of hope, both on the national level, for my family, for our people, but also on the company level. We've had, the platform, Immunai's platform, the Amica platform has grown tremendously. We have delivered some very interesting and important case studies, and there is a lot coming in. So in 2025, we are going to increase our workforce. We are hiring new people. We are going to deploy more projects, teams all over the world. And we are accepting new partnerships. And my hope and belief is that we're going to see statistics of better improved drugs, and I hope to see also an AI designed drugs in our future.
Great. And Karine, how about you? Can you give us some thoughts for the future?
Sure. So on the professional side, I feel that with all the innovation and the development that we are doing end to end, from discovery all the way to commercial, I feel hope. I see that a lot of things that are coming, especially on the oncology side, will bring a lot of hope to cancer patients, and that's also related to on a personal level. So I lost my husband after a long battle with cancer a few months ago, and I think that happiness is a choice, and it's also something I've been speaking with my kids since we lost him, that we chose to be happy and not miserable. And so basically we chose life.
It's beautiful. Well, happy Hanukkah, and thank you so much to both of you for being here today. There are countless jokes about Jews in sports, many claiming that Jews aren't known for their athletic excellence. But one individual has shattered that stereotype and continues to inspire us all.
Olympic bronze medalist and judoka Peter Palchik, since winning the medal in Paris, you've launched a foundation to support athletes in multiple Olympic sports. Tell us a bit about it.
Thank you, first of all.
this, we talk about lights. This was, and this still is one of my biggest lights in my life, because all the way especially during the first years in my career, I struggled financially. And all of a sudden now I have the opportunity to give back. So when I literally on the flight back from Paris to Israel, I decided to launch this foundation and to raise money and to give scholarship, monthly scholarship to each athlete that I will choose the best. I need to choose the best athletes, the youngest and the best athletes, the most talented.
Well, let me ask you about that. You mentioned it briefly. You were born in Crimea, Ukraine, now occupied by Russia. Your journey was marked by physical, emotional, and financial problems. Tell us about that experience for you.
So we did Aliyah. My mom did Aliyah with me alone at the age of 9 months, and she was 23 years old. A young lady with no language, no family history here, just a Zionism dream, and she fulfilled it. She started to build her life here. My grandfather and grandmother came afterwards, one and a half year after that. My mom moved to USA, started to build over there, trying to build over there the new life. So basically, I grew up with my grandfather and grandmother. My grandfather, he was the one that took me to my first judo lesson. And since then, this is the only place I felt home. I felt secure. I felt that I'm bringing myself at the best.
Did that grandfather get to see you win the medal?
Exactly. After every fight,
did.
Of course, after every fight, God bless, will give him to live to 120, right? Years is 85 today. Wow. And after every fight, I called him, FaceTime, and he supported me, encouraged me to keep going, motivated
As a grandfather,
me.
I can tell you, he must have been very
amazing.
proud. Millions of Israelis watched your Olympic victory, and they cheered the accomplishment as our own. Our government gives support to Olympic athletes, but it's tough at war times.
Exactly.
We won 7 medals, nonetheless, at the last Olympics. How many can we win if there's no financial barrier for our athletes?
I have, as Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, right? So I too have a dream that Olympic athletes will not struggle anymore. And it doesn't matter whether you come from rich family or not, or poor family. At the end of the day, the individual Olympic athlete is poor because he needs to finance himself, he needs to support himself financially. Whether it's flights to training camps, even some championships, and
it's full-time.
Food, psychologists, nutrition, everything. In the first year are the most toughest.
I want to ask you a kind of a sports question. You were an underdog heading into Paris. Now, I hear a lot about, sports psychology these days. Were you able to visualize your Olympic medal before you won it?
I can answer in 2 ways. This year was the first time ever on the paper. I was not ever, like in the beginning of the years, of course, I was an underdog, but very fast I became in the top 10 in the world. Actually, in my first year of 2017, after my surgery in my shoulder, it's like my reborn. That's where I reborn. So the first year, I already finished at the top 10 in my category in the world. So since then, till this year, I never dropped. And most of the year, I was top 5, and I was already 1.5 year number 1 in the world ranking.
So not such an underdog.
So not such an underdog, but this year was the worst year in my career.
Training?
The worst, professionally. I lost all the competitions since November, and I had 3 big injuries. One of them was cross ligament. 60% of my cross ligament was teared down 4 months before the Olympic Games. Can you imagine?
Well, let me ask you this. This is a tough question, I know, and one that really an individual athlete needs to decide. I told you that I deal with American football athletes.
Yes.
Our best athletes face a dilemma when they come to be 18. Either go to meaningful Army service, or have special service so that you can continue with the national team. When guys come to you, and I'm sure they do, what do you tell them?
It is a tough question. Look, since I came back from Paris, people call me hero on the streets, wherever I go. And I really thought that the real heroes are the soldiers. They are the true heroes, in my point of view. The one who fights, the one who supports, the one whoever wears this beautiful uniform of the IDF. And that's how I feel. So to answer your question, people who want athletes, who wants to go to the army and to the special forces or some divisions like that, I will encourage them. I will never try to bring them back to the sports and to manipulate them. Of course not.
As I do, the same.
Of course.
You are, Peter, a light unto our nation. Thank you so much for being with ILTV on this Chanukah holiday.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah.
Our final candle represents the light of community. On October 7th, the Israeli and Jewish communities were devastated, but through unwavering determination, organizations and individuals are working tirelessly to rebuild and restore hope. Let's take a look.
The future of Israel lies in the hands of its people. The two organizations you're about to meet, each with unique perspectives, are dedicated to helping individuals take the bold step of building their lives in this country and thriving here. This candle, symbolizing the light of community, represents growth, unity, and the collective journey toward a brighter future. Joining me today is Shmulik Moskowitz, board member and co-founder of Nechama and Hatzalah, an organization dedicated to bringing hope and vital support to Israel's soldiers and security forces. Nechama and Hatzalah works to create a meaningful impact, strengthening both the individuals who protect our nation and the community as a whole. In addition, we have Elon Gilad, CEO of Belong, a private Zionist impact company that is helping New Olim find purpose and opportunity in Israel. The Belong team believes that Aliyah is vital to securing Israel's future and is a part of the new Zionism. Thank you both for joining me. Elon, let's start with you. Belong is focusing on supporting Olim. What do you think are the main challenges that Olim face?
Making Aliyah or immigration is a major change, and it comes with its own challenges. Belong's position is to try to remove as much obstacles as possible from the new Olim that comes to Israel, and making sure that the community here embraces them and they are feeling embraced. They feel belong from the first second they set step in Israel. As the challenges are mainly after they are making the move, making the Aliyah. So we're here to support them with any aspect of their life, whether it's housing, employment, or learning Hebrew.
And how does Belong address the specific challenges that new immigrants face, the ones you just mentioned, such as housing, employment, and learning Hebrew?
So Belong sees the Olim or the Ole journey as a whole. It starts by seeing that their culture is different. So they're here to see a new culture. And we need to make sure that we bridge the gap between the culture that they come from to the Israeli culture. We need to see their journey as a whole with all the challenges that they're facing. So whether we're talking about finding a new house, we need to match them with a real estate agent that understands their challenges, that understands what they're expecting to get, that speaks their language and knows where people like them have already settled. If we're talking about finding a job, it's also bridging the gap between the different cultures when you want to find a job. What do you want to present? How do you emphasize your strength as an Ole versus others who come from here? Preparing them to a job interview and making sure that the companies that wants to take them see the benefits of employing a new Ole versus someone who's already in Israel. If you're talking about learning Hebrew, it means that we need to match them with an ulpan or a private organization that gives them the course in the pace that they expect, that fits the the step in the journey that they're in with people like them to help them talk, to help them face the challenges that they need now. Maybe they don't need to learn how to write now, but they need how to manage the day-to-day activities. So it's really finding the right way, which is personalized to each Aliyah individually.
So important. As someone who immigrated to Israel myself, I can recognize how important your work is. Thank you. And Shmulik, Nechama and Hatzalah focuses on supporting soldiers and security forces. Can you share specific examples of how your organization's programs or donations have made a tangible impact on the lives of those they serve?
Thank you. First of all, I'm second hand of Olim, my mother, that our organization is in her memory. She came to Israel in the age of 18 from New York and decided to stay in Israel and bring us and make a family. So we are second generation to Olim, and I understand how it's important from first hand. And for our organization, Nechama and Hatzalah, first of all, a lot of bulletproof vests saved life for soldiers, for units that are in active service, reserves unit that in the front line work and didn't work, fight and won, for my opinion. With our special gear that we provide them from and bought from donation from around the world, from Brazil to Switzerland, from New York to England to UK. So the first thing that we did in the 7th of October is we bought as much as we can a bulletproof vest and tactical helmet and provide them to the combat units that went to the field in the north or in the field of Gaza. And by the way, my brother is currently in service in Gaza, and Chanukah is coming and actually is going to light the candles inside Gaza. And we provide some Chanukah as well to other units that can light the candles inside Gaza and wherever they have. So we support them from the basic needs of protective gear and helmets to the also spiritual and moral things that we sure that are also important to understand why we fight for. And our nation and Chanukah, one of the symbols and tradition, is one of the things that we're fighting for.
What are the key challenges Israeli soldiers and security forces face today, and how can organizations like yours facilitate and address them?
So our goal is continued support. I have to say, sadly, that some people in Israel got used to war and sometimes don't think all the time about our soldiers in the front line. And we, first of all, make them everything think about it and support them. And a lot of people in Israel do want to support, and a lot of things that the army is, I would say, it fell between the chairs or something that the army can't support them because he's focused on other things. And we know we have like 7 other enemies around us that's fighting us. So that's what our main thing. We support them with gear. We support them in 2025. Our main plan is to support our reserves troops. I'm also in reserves. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the army. And my brother is also in reserves. And we understand that we need to support them. We need to support their families because the challenge of the reserves units will be almost the same in 2025 in terms of how long they need to serve. Some of them already got called for 60 or 90 days next year. So we want to support them, and a lot of programs that we have is to support our reserves teams. This is one project. We also support food, warm meals from home. We're also planning to start to focusing on the PTSD syndrome. We know that a lot of our brothers that fought take the war with them home, and we understand that, and it's going to be one of the focus coming 2025.
Yes, very crucial, absolutely crucial. Thank you. Elon, how was the rise in global anti-Semitism and the events of October 7th? How has that influenced Belong's operations and sense of urgency?
So Belong was founded well before October 7th. However, the events of October 7th and the rise of antisemitism did give us a boost and recognition for how important it is to gear, we as Israelis, to gear up for the wave of Aliyah that we're expecting to get here in Israel. We saw how Jews around the world that thought that they're not connected to Israel, that Israel has no impact on their life, now understand that they need Israel no less than we need them. So we are here really to make sure that the Israeli society and the private sector, which gives the services to those Olim, is geared up to accept the waves of immigration that we expect to get next year. As the war, hopefully, is coming to an end and we see the light and we hope for the return of our hostages back home, we feel that next year there will be a wave of immigration to Israel that we all need to prepare for.
Thank you. Now, community plays a vital role in building resilience. Shmulik, if I can ask you, how does Nechama and Hatzalah engage with local and global communities to foster a sense of unity and support for Israel's soldiers?
We're doing a lot of actions. In the beginning, we had several communities that came to Israel, and we give them like a tour and to get them in first-hand to understand what happened in the 7th of October. We did it for several groups. Actually, we did it also for explanation. Not communities, but actually a delegation from Brazil also came, and we also saw them firsthand, to the effect on the world to understand what happened in the 7th of October. And the community that came, that want to help in any way, even if it's going one day to the field to walk to the farms, or sometimes they want to one day spend with the families that got evicted, and not evicted, but they need to go away from home and still hadn't returned home yet, and hopefully they're going to return home quick. So our connection with the communities around the world, and actually we have family also in a few places in the world, allows us to tell the story. And I think it's really important us to tell the story of what's happening here in Israel and to help them to understand it. And in the end, it's a small world after all. And what happened in Israel, it's like the butterfly effect. It's going to affect everything in the world. Everybody understands that. And the connection, and we give them a lot of information and tell the story what happened in Israel, that is never forgotten. And they will tell the story in the next generation. And that's one of the things that we think is very important to all of us.
Thank you, Shmulik. And Eilon, last I'm going to ask you, what initiatives is Belong developing to help the diaspora Jews connect with Israel beyond Aliyah? You mentioned they need us just as much as we need them. What can be done?
We're not just promoting Aliyah. We're also helping connecting any Jew around the world, any Jew that wants to better connect, invest, study, or even just travel in Israel, to open them more opportunities and connections here in Israel, to feel that they're embraced by our society, and they are. We just need to make sure that everybody is geared up to this task, and everybody knows that this is one of the missions, one of the new missions of the new Zionism, is to accept those Olim. We've already developed a comprehensive website, Belong, COAL, which gathers information of any aspect of life of the Ole, or even someone who just comes to a visit. It's already there. We're now developing a tool that will be a kind of a project plan or a project aid to the project of Aliyah or coming to Israel. So you can plan your Aliyah journey with it, and it will help you overcome many of the bureaucratic challenges that any move such as Aliyah is facing.
Eilon Gilad and Shmulik Moskowitz, thank you both for joining me today.
Tonight, Jews around the world will kindle the 6th Hanukkah candle. Now, let's return to Tel Aviv, where the renowned David Deor will lead us in the blessing over the Hanukkah lights.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
Thank you, David, for that heartfelt and beautiful prayer. And thank you to all our viewers from around the world who joined us today. May the year ahead be filled with blessings of hope and light. On behalf of ILTV and Ynet News, I'm Maayan Hoffman. Until next year, Happy Hanukkah and Happy New Year.